Hello and welcome. I'm Jim Shook, the Director of the Cybersecurity and Compliance Practice in our Global Technology Office for Data Protection. Today, we're going to talk about protecting your organization in the age of ransomware. I'd like to start with a bit of context. So if you've been paying attention in the cybersecurity world lately, you know that a lot of things have been going on. Starting on the left side, we had an attack, a ransomware attack on a pipeline provider back in May. And what was interesting about that, it was a very standard attack from a ransomware and destructive standpoint. But because it hit critical infrastructure, the pipeline operator, people felt the impact very quickly. And it was people outside of normal kind of cybersecurity space. On the East Coast here, we had immediate shortages of gas, and there were lines for filling up. On the news, the story led the news almost every day. And so that drove a lot of interest from business and C-suite leaders to learn more about these ransomware attacks. It also led the US government to conduct some hearings about what happened, and that has led to some additional best practice and potentially some more regulation, which is kind of a mixed bag for some people, but the best practices are good. So overall, that's been an interesting development. In the middle there's a lot of attacks, very sophisticated, that have been attributed to the nation state of Russia. So late last year, there was an attack on a software provider that helped to manage people's networks and infrastructure. And the attack there was a little different because it attacked their code, which is something that we call a supply chain attack. So the malware was buried in the code. People who were customers and had updated to that version of the code got the surprise of the malware. And the Russians used this to steal a lot of important data from very sophisticated organizations. So you note there, that wasn't a ransomware or destructive attack, it was data theft. We all wondered at the time, what if somebody repeated that attack, but it ended with ransomware? And unfortunately, we got the answer to that just a few months ago with another software provider being attacked in a similar manner. They provided software to manage service providers who in turn had a lot of customers, and those attacks ended in ransomware attacks, tens to hundreds of millions of dollars of loss there. So the takeaway from that really is thinking about the sophistication of these attacks and the fact that nation states are often involved, even though they're attacking businesses. That third photo, it's just the side of a building. We took the logo off, but there was an insurance company that was hit earlier this year with a ransomware attack. And the reason I put that one up is that it's publicly available news. They paid $40 million in their ransom. We're seeing a lot more of that lately, that organizations are being attacked and paying millions of dollars in ransom. So the bad actors just aren't going to go away willingly. It's also very interesting that this particular company provided cyber insurance, and for them to be attacked, it's kind of just an interesting development. So the last piece in the middle, in October last year in the United States, the Department of Treasury issued an advisory saying that, by the way, these ransomware attacks are really bad, and if you pay the ransom, you might be breaking US laws depending on who's receiving the money. That's led to some healthy discussion about whether people should pay ransoms, whether they should be allowed to pay the ransoms, and whether insurers should cover the ransom payments. That is an ongoing discussion and is leading to some other requirements and concerns in this space. But ultimately, when you look at the information across the top there, over 2/3 of organizations really aren't confident that they could recover their data after a ransomware or destructive attack. And so paying the ransom is often kind of the course of last resort here. So this is kind of just some interesting context to what we're seeing in this space and what makes ransomware and destructive attacks so difficult. When you think about what to do in protect and guard against these attacks and to recover from them, you really have to start with the bad actors. So as you saw on the previous slide, we have very sophisticated actors such as nation states who are deploying very sophisticated capabilities in this space. They're hard to stop, particularly when they're doing supply chain attacks, which bring them into your network along the back of software or other capabilities that you already trust. We often think a lot about the criminals. So on the far left, criminals are very sophisticated. There's a whole ecosystem. There's billions of dollars at stake here. And so we have to think about the mom and pops that might use ransomware as a service, along with the more sophisticated criminals like Evil Core or Revel that have their own, basically, businesses in the space. But we can't lose track of two other things. One, the insiders. So nobody likes to think about their employees doing bad things, but they're possible and they're already in your network. So you've got to have defenses in that space too. And then you think about the hacktivists and potentially terrorists in this space. The issue there is if they get into your network and encrypt your data, ransomware, they actually don't want a ransom. They probably want to destroy or hurt you or just to cause chaos. So in those cases, you might not even have the ability to pay ransom to get your data back. You've got to be prepared. One of the ways to prepare is to have a backup. So normally, these ransomware and destructive attacks will target production data, applications, and databases, for example, and they'll encrypt that data. And then, of course, the bad actors will sell you the keys to decrypt those things. If you have a backup, in theory, you might be able to use that to recover. Well, the bad actors know that too. And so the latest techniques, and really goes back several years at this point, they've just become even more sophisticated. The bad actors will target your backup infrastructure. So they know if you have your backup, that they're probably not going to be paid. They will steal credentials. They will become super admins. We've seen them log in and destroy entire backups. Some of the malware that's out there takes out Windows platforms and sometimes Linux too. So they will take out master servers, media servers, storage targets, and nothing's really safe from them if they can access it. Even copies of data in the cloud, they can steal those passwords with the tools that they have, log in and destroy that content too. So let's think about that backup as a starting point, but we have to build from there if we want to have the ability to recover from one of these attacks. Similarly, and this is really a discussion point for business leaders, they've spent a lot of time and effort on disaster recovery capabilities. And those are very important if you have an operational disaster or you lose a facility to natural disaster or some kind of operational disaster. Unfortunately, it's not going to help you much in a cyber attack because the techniques that we have for DR tend to be replication of data so that it's at a second site that we can use to fail over. In a cyber attack, it's just going to replicate corrupt data, replicate the malware, and so you often lose all of your sites at once. So there's a lot of things we can learn from disaster recovery when we talk about cyber recovery, but you need different tools, different technologies to really support that process. So what do you do? This is a very high-level depiction of the NIST cybersecurity framework. It's something I work globally, so organizations across the world use this to help to benchmark what they are doing, to understand where they might need to improve, and also many times to figure out with their insurers what their risk levels are and how they can get their coverages and what those are going to cost based on the risk that they have left. Most organizations have, over the years, spent time and effort building up for these capabilities: identify, protect, detect, and respond. The recover capability is newer because it really wasn't that important until we started to get these destructive attacks and then the ransomware attacks after it. The idea behind recover is the attack has unfortunately been successful. So you've got those capabilities in those other spaces like protect and detect. They just didn't work in this particular case, which happens frequently. How do you ensure that ability to recover the business, at least the most critical applications, in an efficient amount of time so that you have ongoing viability to your organization? We've gotten some best practice advice recently. As I mentioned before, the US government getting more involved. The focus in that area is on having a backup and then protecting that backup by having a vault or a disconnected copy, making sure that that copy isn't available to the bad actor. So you can see here some recommendations from some US institutions, as well as Sheltered Harbor, which is a best practice organization. And then in that bottom left, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. The reason we don't have more there is that these are very specific recommendations and not everybody is at that point yet. There's still a lot of kind of general rules that are out there. But these are good takeaways because this really is the best practice advice in this space. And this is how we've approached it in our team at Dell. We call this cyber recovery. Have an extra copy of the most critical applications and data that really run your organization and you need to protect it. And we call it protection with the 3 I's: isolation, immutability, and intelligence. So the isolation, thinking back to those best practices, we're creating a vaulted copy with a logical air gap that the bad actors just can't access, even if they're insiders. The immutability, we lock that data with special controls so that if somebody does somehow get access, maybe somebody who has access physically or something else goes wrong, it's very difficult for them to change, encrypt, or delete that data. And finally, the intelligence. It's a little different from what people think. We're not looking for malware with the intelligence. We're taking the data that we have protected and answering the question, is this data good? Is this application valid? Can I use it if I had to recover it? And those are our 3 I's that we roll into our PowerProtect Cyber Recovery solution. So we could spend a lot of time on this. I just want to give you a quick overview. On the left side, we've got our data center. You're already running applications there. You've got backup procedures. We want to leverage those. So on the right side, we create another copy of that data in a vault. That vault really can live anywhere. It can be on-prem, it can be in a cloud, it can be managed through a provider. But we like some physical isolation, so those components there in a locked room or a cage. And then the logical isolation that I talked about, that logical air gap, there's no connectivity into that vault in a normal status. What we do, these dots on here, on a regular basis, we enable that vault so that data can get into there. We update the copies that we have. That's our sync. And then we shut that air gap back down. And even when it's open, the way that we've architected this, you can't impact the components in the vault, even when that's open. We make a copy of that data. Most organizations will keep it for a couple of weeks. We lock it. That's our immutability. And then we have our analytics. That's our intelligence to tell us, is that data good or bad? We do this day over day. It's automated. If there is an attack in production, we use that data from the vault to enable a recovery back to production once it's been resecured, or perhaps to another location, depending on your processes. I talked a little bit about the analytics. So for us, they're very unique. They're called CyberSense. And what they do is they read through the backup that we're protecting in that vault down to the file level. They take over 100 observations of that file, the file name, its size, and then really complex things like the entropy of the file, how much randomness is in this file, and chunking and similarity components. We take all of that data, we feed it to a machine learning algorithm. Again, this is the tricky part. It's been trained to recognize data that's corrupt. It's not looking for malware. It's not looking for signatures. It's saying, if I had to use this data to recover, is it good, or has somebody already done something to it? We do that day over day. If there is an attack, you can understand what data is good, what data is bad, and that really makes your recovery process safer and more efficient. The other thing, as I mentioned, we can really put this vault anywhere. So traditionally, as we've offered this, it's been deployed on premises. So we help our customers set that up, help them understand how to run it, and then they take it from there. We know everybody's got multi-cloud strategies. We've got the edge. We've got all kinds of SaaS applications, everything else out there. So we have built up our offering in the space. We have a multi-cloud offering that has access to hyperscalers and VMC and Oracle Cloud to protect those workloads and enable that recovery in an efficient and less expensive manner. And then we've started building out this capability in the hyperscalers. We've rolled out our AWS offering and expect to follow with other hyperscalers very shortly. We also have a lot of partners who offer this on a different types of management basis. So whatever your requirements are, we can meet them with the same technologies that I showed you that with the 3 I's are really going to protect that data in the best way possible. This is an area that's confusing to a lot of people. There aren't a lot of standards. The best one out there is from a group called the Sheltered Harbor, which is a nonprofit formed by our financial institutions in the United States. Our solution is the only one that's been endorsed to meet the requirements that they've come up with. We're very proud of that. We've worked very hard with that team. If you are a financial entity who's a member of Sheltered Harbor, you can deploy this vault and have a turnkey system that meets the requirements. If you're not, you can deploy this vault and know that we've met the most stringent requirements that are out there to make sure that that vault is secure. We've been doing this for a long time. My practice dates back almost 7 years now that we've been helping customers understand these challenges and how to solve them. We're up to, this is a little bit of a dated number here that we're looking to update, around 1,000 customers that have purchased our vault, a lot of firsts in this space, and we continue to innovate. If you want to follow up, we've got a lot of collateral, videos, testimonials, all kinds of content on our space. And we look forward to the opportunity to talk with you more about the PowerProtect Cyber Recovery solution and about our practice in this space. Thank you.